Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the City Council regular session for Solvang for Monday, July 12th. And now call the meeting to order at 6:30. Madam Clerk, would you please take the roll?
Councilmember Clark,
Here.
Councilmember Infante,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Arona,
Here.
Councilmember Thomas,
Here.
Mayor Uhrig,
Here.
all present.
And before we start, I'd like to, if we can have Mayor Pro Tem Arona lead us in the flag salute.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. First item on the agenda is a proclamation. If I can have Miss Eileen Knotts come forward. That would be good. I'm going to read this first before presenting it to you.
Okay.
This is a proclamation in recognition and appreciation of Eileen Knotts for 30 years of service to the Solvang community as Bethania Preschool and After-School Director. Whereas Eileen started at Bethania Preschool in June of 1991 and shortly after became the director of the program. Whereas when Eileen started, Bethania Preschool had 12 kids in the program and only offered class part-time. Early on, she identified a need in the community to also offer care for children in elementary school, and she oversaw the implementation of Bethania's before-school and after-school programs to accommodate parents' busy work schedules, as well as our school-age summer program and week-long camps for when public schools were closed. In her time at Bethania, she has grown the program to now accommodate over 130 children every year. Whereas, as director, Eileen has had thousands of children come through the program, including many children of those who once attended. She has been integral to creating a philosophy at our preschool and after school of harboring an environment of love and compassion for all kids, as well as being at the forefront of early childhood education in the San Ynez Valley and preparing children to enter into elementary school with the tools to succeed. Whereas Eileen has literally impacted the lives of thousands of kids in this valley, many of whom continually return to say hello and thank her for the kindness and care she showed in their time here. Not only is our church community grateful for what she has built and maintained, but I know our community at large, as well as here in Solvang, as many adult residents today have been nurtured by her passion for this preschool and after school. Now therefore I, Charlie Uhrig, Mayor of the City of Solvang, along with the City Council, do hereby recognize and thank Eileen Knotts for her tremendous contributions to the community of over the past 30 years. Thank you.
Hey, Charlie. Straighten your badge.
What's that? Oh, excuse me, sorry.
You don't want to look askew, you know. Good job.
1, 2, 3. Do one more. 1, 2, 3.
Jay,
Can I say something? Yeah.
Please.
You have to come stand next to me if I'm going to talk, though. I just want to say, as pastor of Bethania Lutheran, there's probably no one who has single-handedly added to the philosophy of our church more than Eileen has. And it's been a joy to watch her in my 6 years as pastor, but I know it's been a joy for this community to have their kids here with her. And we are so grateful and excited for this new adventure in her life and that she'll keep being here. And this one's sad that she won't have her as a director, but this one's super happy. And thank you all for honoring her so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you again, Eileen. I've had a couple of kids and grandkids going through myself, so thank you again. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 1?
Item number 1 is public communications, written or verbal. The council welcomes your input at this time. You may address the council on items not on the agenda and consent agenda. Time limit is 3 minutes.
And right now, I have one speaker slip for an item not on the agenda. That would be Jenny Landau. Come on forward.
Well, I'm Jenny from the trolley, horse trolley, and I'm coming up with some problems in the alley park. That's on our route now that Copenhagen is closed. And it's almost on a daily basis that I drive the trolley, almost every time I work, where the trolley is blocked with different cars or trucks. And it's not, I'm not talking about delivery trucks like Giordano's or something like that. It's personal or construction vehicles, people who have businesses in the valley or in Solvang. Mostly what I can recognize is they might be on Copenhagen there. And it's gotten to where my alternate is to come up First Street from Copenhagen, and there's a little slice between the wine store that I can peek to see as I'm coming down the street, is there somebody in the alley? And I have about 30 seconds to make a decision. Can I make that? Or do I have to make a turnaround right here in the where the alley, the alleys come together on First Street? And that's a 360-degree turn. I can make that turn because I have a good team of horses. But quite often these crew cab, long bed trucks, if they're parked on both sides of the road there, like today, I didn't have a choice. I couldn't go down I felt like I couldn't go down the alley because it was blocked with a truck. When I drove to work at 15 after 10, there were 3 vehicles in the alley. The one vehicle that was blocking me never left until maybe between 3 and 4 o'clock. And I kept trying to make that 360-degree turn, which is not on my route, but I can't go on Highway 246, Mission. So I need some consideration. You know, what would you like us to do when the alley is blocked? And I'm also blocked by even turning around and just going back on First Street because, you know, those big vans nowadays, they're very long and they park in the parking places too, but they hang over a long ways. And it's difficult to work with this. I've asked people to move at times, and I've actually had to call the sheriff a couple times because they just say, no, you know. And I'm in the alley with a very long vehicle, and there's nowhere for me to turn around there, even with a good team that I have. And I'm wondering, you know, what we could come up with to help us out of this problem. It says no parking on the signs, and there are people just using that as their parking lot every single day. It's the same vehicles a lot of times.
Well, we'll just try to clarify.
Yeah.
Going north on First, past Copenhagen,
Yes.
you are doing like a 360 right there at Parkway. I just want to clarify, it's Parkway
If
alley?
I'm forced to.
No.
If I'm
just-
forced to, I
I'm
can.
Just
But-
trying to find
yeah.
in my head where you're at.
But normally, I would make a right-hand turn and go down the alley, come out at Alisal, make a right on Alisal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's some of the vehicles that are in that section between Alisal and First.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And
When you leave here,
Mm-hmm.
would you mind talking with our lieutenant and just
Okay.
letting him know about those issues, and we'll
Okay.
just make sure someone from patrol can go by and make sure that we're at least ticketing them for not parking, because all of that is fire lane, I know that.
The other thing too is, that is Solvang's, I want to say property, but,
It's,
yeah, yes. And that's, you know, we do our best to follow the rules.
right,
And most people don't realize that in the DMV handbook, it says that a driver of animals, oxen, mules, or horses, can direct the public to stop, you know, something like that, or wait, or, you know, you're gonna have to
Right.
move, we don't have any way. Because I'm dealing with an animal that also has to think and obey.
right. Which is, yeah, and I understand where you're coming from on that. And for me, the biggest thing is that it's a fire lane, is not supposed to have parking there. And I know that a lot of the freight trucks, Giordano's, Cisco,
Sure.
you know, a lot of them will stop temporarily. But if they're still there, that would definitely warrant a call to the sheriff's department to come out and, or maybe, I don't know, not really our code enforcement, right, Eddie? Yeah. Right, so,
It might not be a bad idea to ask Chamber of Commerce to send out something as a reminder to those businesses in that area to not park there. And
yeah,
Lieutenant Green, would you like to come up here and?
Well, anyway, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And Charlie, appreciate
we
y'all.
can talk offside.
thank you. I don't have any other speaker slips. Are there any speakers that wish to speak that are in the audience right here? If not, we'll take it out to Zoom, see if there's any that wish to address the council on any items that are not on the agenda.
Would anybody on Zoom like to speak on items not on the agenda or consent agenda? Please raise your hand or unmute yourself. See none?
Seeing none, we'll bring it back. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 2?
Item number 2 is the city manager's report. I have a brief report tonight. First off, if we can have the slides, we had a great kickoff to the new fiscal year post-COVID-19 with the 4th of July parade. You see some of the photographs here from this year's parade. I understand it was very well attended. Our city council is there and the veterans group, and you see all the folks gathered up, even though it was an alternate route, not on Mission Drive. It was definitely a success. And we are looking forward to the next event, which would be our next major event, which would be the Danish Days, which is currently scheduled for September 17th and 18th, which will be the Friday and Saturdays for this year. Now, turning towards a little bit less happy subject here, that we are in drought stage 1. Just a reminder to everybody again that on April 12th, the City Council issued a Stage 1 drought declaration, which calls for 15% voluntary reduction in our water consumption. There is a number of different specific items that are in that declaration and can be viewed online on the city website, and they're also sent to all of our utility users with the latest newsletter for the summer period. Now, even more unfortunate is that the state of California is experiencing a significant drought. So now there's 50 counties that have been declared in the state of drought by our governor in the state of California. And as of the latest, the Santa Barbara County, along with actually San Luis Obispo, has been added to that declaration. So things are looking fairly bleak for the next year, with CCWA indicating that for the next year, allocation is likely to start at 0%. This year we got 5%, which was the second year ever of historic low. They're looking at as low as 0% with a 50% chance that it may stay as low as 15% or lower. So these are all concerning signs, and staff is developing recommendations, and we will be coming back to council at the next agenda or the following agenda with further recommendations on dealing with the drought conditions. Now, Copenhagen Drive closure survey based on council direction from the prior meeting. We are looking for community input. There's been 2 surveys issued. One was for the residents specifically, and one was for the business community. Those were sent out to the distribution lists that we have for utility billing and for the general plan update for the residents, and to all the emails that we have for our business licenses. The first sample will be taken on July 20th, so we encourage everybody to give us as much feedback as you can, as early as possible. And the survey can also be accessed at the city website if you haven't received the email. So far, we have great success. It's only been open for 3 days, and we have about 150 residents that have responded, and about 60 businesses. So it's a great response rate so far, but we definitely want to get as many residents and businesses to give us their feedback. Now, moving on to the advanced calendar, a reminder that we have on July 14th, this Wednesday, starting at 5 p.m., a closed session regarding conference with labor negotiator. And then the next regular council meeting on July 26th, we may also need to start earlier with a closed session. There's a couple of items that will be announced later to you that may need to be brought to your attention. Based on your prior council direction and the items that you requested, there's a few items that will be presented to you, including the Fjord Bypass project status update. And I will just say that right now that the subject matter of that is pending the general plan update. It's only in the CIP because it was part of the old circulation element under the general plan. So currently, we are working on a comprehensive general plan update, and all of the circulation issues will be completely looked at from a new perspective of where we are today and what the vision is for the city of Soloming going forward. But we'll come back with more detail on July 26th with that. We'll also be talking about solving crime trends and presentation with working with our Lieutenant Green, and also have some conversation about people helping people efforts. Now, the Therapeutic Riding Program grant application will be presented to you based on your direction from the time you discussed the budget, and will be presented to you as a separate item. Copenhagen Drive closure survey will be presented to you based on the results drawn on June 20th as a preliminary matter, and we may need to continue that item, but that will be presented to you as an update on the information we have at that point. Then we also have an item on Caltrans Highway 246 bridge replacement. And as I just mentioned, we'll be coming to you with recommendations on how to further address what we now anticipate as far as drought conditions for the city of Soloming and ensure we have sufficient supply of water. And the final item on July 26th will be the second reading of the Tourism Advisory Committee. If you move forward with that tonight, that's on today's agenda. Now, moving on to August items, just a quick reminder that on August 9th, we'll have the elections by districts first public hearing. Then we'll discuss the general fund fees update, which we've been working on, which will also include the discussion and policy direction on the use of the Veterans Hall and the user fees for that. The next item will be an updated public works standard details and a water system risk and resiliency study presentation. On August 23rd, you will finally have the Council Planning Commission joint meeting where you will review and discuss and adopt the vision and guiding principles for the general plan. So this is a product that's coming out of the first 2 workshops for the general plan update. Once again, we are doing the first ever comprehensive general plan update for the city of Soloming. And during the first 2 workshops, there was community input collected as to the existing conditions and the vision and where the community would like to go going forward. We've also formed the GPAC, General Plan Update Advisory Committee, which consisting of 15 people 2 council members, 2 planning commissioners, and 2 design review committee members who have met and have drafted the first draft of the vision guiding principles, which will then go to design review committee for review, and then will come to you for final review on August 23rd, along with the planning commission as a joint meeting. Then we'll have the elections by district second public hearing, and the wastewater treatment phase 3, which will be the last phase for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, which is the recycled water. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Are there any questions of the city manager's report?
Mayor, I have one.
Councilmember Thomas?
On the Copenhagen survey, is there a way that we will be able to see the returns on the Copenhagen businesses specifically?
So the survey does request that the businesses fill out their information, actually residents as well, but it does not require that.
But we will be able to see what comes back
You will-
specifically to the Copenhagen Business District.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Also, a
Councilmember
question.
Infante.
Thank you. I was looking at the advanced calendar. You didn't go any farther than August 23rd, I believe. But you're showing all the way out in October that we're going to do the marketing services RFP that I believe is supposed to start for the services in January. Isn't that pushing it a little too far out? Shouldn't we be getting an RFP out in August and reviewing it in September?
So part of today's agenda, and if there is a tourism advisory committee formed, that would take 2 readings, which the first one would be today and the second would be the July 26th. Once the second reading occurs, and if that's approved, then the tourism advisory committee would be in effect 30 days from that. We can run the recruitment prior to that, or at least have applications. But part of that, purpose of that Tourism Advisory Committee would be to work on development of the RFP itself. So they would be tentatively starting at the end of August, so we could potentially push it towards end of September. But I think that even with October, that's probably sufficient amount, October, November, with an execution in December.
Well, one of the things that occurred to me is that we're giving people extensions on their contracts now so that they can do planning into the future. If we go to somebody like IDK and we wait until, and if we're going to go out with an RFP in October, that means we're not going to be going into an acceptance of the contract till around November. That gives them 1 month to start events starting in January, and it doesn't seem adequate. That's the part of the problem we're having right now. So I think this should be moved up.
I can definitely give it the consideration, possibly move it to September, given that there is input, if there's going to be a tourism advisory committee, to give them the opportunity to give that input.
I would like to see it moved up. I don't know about the rest of the council. They don't have a problem with it, then.
I think a lot of it is timing, and we do have to go out the 30 days past that, but I mean, if we could try to get it, I guess pushing it to the second council meeting of September, is that,
That would definitely be
We can do
possible.
whatever we want.
we can? And I'm waiting for your input, Mr. Clerk.
I have no complaint with Councilmember Infante's request.
But I think it would behoove us to try to see if we could get that pushed a little bit, if we could.
Absolutely. That's
Thank you.
Are
Not a
there any
problem.
other comments or questions from the city manager's report? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 3?
Item number 3 is council comments, requests, and advance calendar.
Which you just did, advance calendar. That's all right. Jumping the gun. Are there any requests or anything, questions?
Yes, I do
Mayor
have a
Pro Tem Arroyo.
request. I was contacted by the Rotary Club. They have a fantastic program for people that want to be involved in public service, such as what we do here. It's open to Anybody 18 and over, I believe it might also be open to high school students. It's just a means to get people that might be interested in public service to get them, give them our own orientation, and they'd like to do a presentation on that. So I'll get you in touch with the president of the Rotary Club, Ian Jacobson, so that he can get that on.
Which Rotary is that?
Rotary for Solvang,
For
the Solvang
Solvang
Rotary Club.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Infante?
Is this the appropriate time to talk about some of these expense reports?
That would be item 4.
Okay, then I'll wait for item 4.
All right.
Thank you.
I just have a few announcements. I was sad to miss the 2 grand openings that we had on July 2nd over at 1525 Mission, and then over at the Dowdle Folk Art there for those new businesses that were just coming into Solvang. So appreciate the council members that were able to make those events for me, and thank you. I did get a letter from Richard Barca, who was the July 4th as part of the St. Inez Valley Rotary, just saying that, thanking us and the community for the support, and that they were disappointed they couldn't put on the fireworks show for us this year, but as long as everything is going like it is right now, they anticipate a great 2022 fireworks show. So that came from Richard Barca and Tammy Westwood of the St. Inez Valley Rotary. Give a congratulations to the community partners in Caring. They're a nonprofit that work in the North County area. Part of them are in our area here. They are specific to seniors and working with them, and I know that's kind of near and dear to most of us here on the council. But they were nominated and for the Nonprofit of the Year Award by State Assemblyman Steve Bennett and Senator Monique Limon. So that was, congratulations on that award for them. One of the items coming up is that starting, I guess now, actually starting July 3rd, the hours for the library for both the Valley Libraries, Buellton and Solvang, are going to be extended. So now it'll be from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., Tuesdays through Saturdays. There will be longer times that you can stay in there, up to 25 minutes for browsing and for computer sessions. And the libraries are still requiring masks to be inside, so just know that when you go there. And if you go check the library's website, there are a number of events that are coming up during July. So check those out. I know there's a few of them, including some book signings that are going to be out there and some nice readings that are going to be going along. And lastly, I just wanted to give again a shout out to the Bethania Church and Linda Marzullo from Bethania Lutheran Church for their efforts in feeding our valley and our community. And on June 29th, which is week 67, they fed 295 households, which amounted to 1,136 individuals. First time in were 67 people. So that's still a significant amount of people that are still hurting because of the pandemic. On July 6th, which was last Tuesday, week 68, they fed 331 households. Up to 1,378 individuals were fed. So again, we really thank them for taking care of our valley, our community, and Solvang, and that's right here at Bethania Church. That's all the comments that I have right now. Oh, Councilmember Clark.
The County Library Advisory Committee has reached out to the council, and I guess they weren't, they were looking for somebody to be on the County Library Advisory Committee, and I agreed to do that today because I love books so much and I love libraries. So just to let you know, I haven't gotten any follow-up. I just know that they've asked me to do that. Go ahead.
Thank you for doing that. Appreciate it. One comment with regard to the library. I am signed up to present next Monday to the State Court Trial Disposition Committee people that take care of the courts, to see if we can't get the court declared null and void, whatever the descriptive adjective would be for it, so that we could expand the library into that facility and probably double the size of the library. I've been dealing with some of the people at the library, and so I thought you should know that. If you want to be, I'll send you the link if you'd like to be there.
Please.
I will do that.
That's a wonderful idea. I'm sure there's something to do with the county, why we haven't shut that thing down, or why it's still there, I don't know.
We can't.
It's actually
Correct.
the
It's up to them.
Superior Court that has that, not really the county
But we can
on
try.
that section. We can try,
I tried.
absolutely.
I got hold of, on the board of the library from Goleta, the CFO out there, and he said, nope, you gotta talk to the state court people. So I'm gonna talk to the state court people on Monday, make a
Great.
presentation and see what they will say about what we can do for the library.
They'll turn it into affordable housing.
Councilmember Clark, thank you for taking that on. I know I'd been asked that there were a couple of council members interested, and I thought you might have been one.
I am,
So
and
I
if anybody else
appreciate you.
wanted to do it, I was fine to let somebody else take a swing at it, but I have a passion for that kind of stuff, so right up my
We
alley.
appreciate you being able to do that.
Thank you.
Good.
Um,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just want to finish up, say, I want to thank you for addressing the Fjord Drive, because we've been getting so much communication about it, as if people think it's going to start tomorrow, and it's just a procedural thing that it's been in the CIP for so long, but we still get those emails, so it's nice to get that addressed and put it to bed, as far as I'm concerned. And then, my last comment is, on 4th of July, if you listen to certain news outlets, you think this country is coming apart at the seams, and the flag is a symbol of hatred. And I have to say that it was just absolutely heartwarming to see people from all walks of life with the American flags, waving, having a great time, and celebrating this beautiful, wonderful country that we live in. And so I was just really, really, really encouraged to see what a great, great crowd and a whole lot of happy people. So it was an awful lot of fun. And just the fact that we're open again, and it's just really neat. In fact, I did an interview last week with one of the hosts on Fox News talking about being reopened and what it's like to battle Sacramento, et cetera. So that was quite an experience. It was fun. That's all I got.
Do you
Sounds
have
good.
that tape?
It's online.
I'd like to see it, okay.
Steve Hilton's California podcast.
Okay.
All right.
On the issue of the courts, I would suggest maybe we sit down and talk about that before you make an individual contact, and see if there's a good comprehensive way we could go to them with a proposal.
Thank you, I'd love to do
Yeah.
that, but considering Brown Act violations, how do we do that before Monday?
We do it tonight in the council. No, we can't.
We can't, can we? It's not on the agenda.
Well, we can do an ad hoc with you two.
Dave is about to do.
There's two ways you could do it.
Oh,
You
it's
could do
Dave. I
it-
didn't recognize.
This is my bear camouflage. So. There are two ways that you could do it. You could do an ad hoc of just two members. Two members could go ahead and do that with a generalized idea of what the council wants to do, or you could add an item to the agenda. There's need to take immediate action. It came to the attention of the council after the agenda was posted, and as long as 4 of the 5 of you believe that it needs to be added to the agenda, you can go ahead and add it to the agenda. Once it's added, it's a regular agenda item for all purposes, so you could do that. You can put it at the end of the agenda if you'd like to do that.
Or if you want to do an ad hoc with just you and I'm fine with that too.
Well, but Jim had some comments on it. and that's
No,
why
I just want to make sure we take our time and do it right. You know, when you're dealing with the courts and with the state, a phone call is probably not going to get that ball rolling.
No, this is a presentation to a Zoom meeting of the trial. I got to look at their names.
There's
but-
an acronym for it.
Yeah, it's the association that deals with what they do with the courts. And it doesn't, you know, it doesn't
It's
come
a
up very often.
bureaucracy. Well,
It is a bureaucracy.
my point is that maybe get together, or the two of you get together or whatever, and come up with a game plan with the libraries and
Sure.
Yeah.
go with that.
Would we all feel more comfortable putting it on the agenda at the end and just voting on it, so you have that?
Actually, I think that's a great idea.
We can do
I
that.
think let's
Yeah,
do that.
At the end of the evening,
Uh,
last item for tonight? Is that okay?
Yeah, so what I would suggest is that I'll formulate a motion, and someone can go ahead and make that motion. The motion would be to add an item to the agenda, that there was a need to take immediate action because there is a meeting on Monday, and that the item came to the attention of the city council at the meeting tonight after the agenda was posted.
I will move that we add an item to the agenda this evening, as the issue came up for a meeting on Monday, so it's imminent, and that we should discuss it before a presentation is made to this body.
Second.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes?
Mayor Pro Tem Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Urigan.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Do we need to have public comment on that?
When the item comes up as a regular
When the
item.
item
yeah.
comes up? We'll make that item number 8 and move the existing item 8 back. That works. All right. Get my agenda out here, excuse me. Moving on to item number 4. Madam Clerk, would you read that?
Item number 4 is consent agenda. Approval of the agenda as presented. Approval of minutes of regular city council meeting on June 28, 2021. Receive warrant register for the month of June 2021. Approve contract extension for fiscal year 2021-22 as follows, and authorize the city manager to execute the contract. Contract amendment with Mintier Harnish, adding housing element update.
All right. Are there any items that any council members wish to move?
Can we
Councilmember
just discuss
Infante.
it without moving it? Or, yeah, I'm not, do we have to pull it to discuss it? Just have a question or two.
You can go ahead and pull that item and approve the rest of the consent agenda and then have the questions on the item that's been pulled. Or you could just consider the item immediately before you go forward
Approve it.
with it. There are
Let's
two
just-
ways that you could do it.
Let's just consider it, if you would. I just had a couple of quick questions. I noticed that there's a bill on here for a company called Air Sage. So I didn't know what they were, so I looked them up. That's on page 19. And Air Sage looks at cell towers and who's using them, and basically gets you marketing information on who's coming from what city, how, you know, and a lot of that kind of stuff. Who uses that data?
That is a very good question, insightful, Councilmember Infante. That has come up as part of the economic element update for the general plan update. So we are in part sharing the cost, half shared by the city and half shared by the consultant. They will be using the data as part of the economic element update, and the city will also use that data to supplement our marketing efforts because it's good data for both venues.
It's interesting data, but since we don't have a marketing department, I was wondering who was using it. So if we use it, then we could presumably give it to the new tourist
Correct.
action committee, whatever we're going to call those guys.
Correct.
How often is this expected? This is a $10,000 bill, and that's our half of it?
No, we are the contractor, so that we would have the ownership of that, and then we will have a $5,000 shared by the Minter Harnish, our general plan consultant.
Okay, so our cost is going to be $5,000, but this is a one-time shot.
Yes, unless we wanted to use it in the future, but that
In
would
the
be
future,
future
we could talk about
discussion.
it, but right now, since we don't have a marketing department, we don't have a tourist group, I was wondering why we're spending this money. Thank you. There was, I think that was it. I think that's it. Thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions? Do we have a motion to accept the,
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
do we have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Arona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Urick.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Moving on to regular business items. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 5?
Item number 5 is receive a report on Skid Mesa code enforcement. Per council direction, receive status report on code enforcement progress in the Skid Mesa neighborhood. So as background on this item is that on April 26, 2021, City Council received a report on Skid Mesa code enforcement issues, including violations of the municipal code and covenants, conditions, and restrictions, CCNRs. Council directed staff to proceed with municipal code violations enforcement, but not the CCRs. which is the city has the right but not an obligation to enforce the CNRs. City code enforcement is based on complaint-based system. We currently have a part-time contract code enforcement officer who has been working on enforcement of the municipal code at the Skid Mesa. So majority of the violations that we're currently dealing with at the Skid Mesa has to do with the sheds. Code enforcement sent out letters seeking compliance to 21 residents at the Skid Mesa neighborhood. The issues primarily involve setbacks, where there's not enough space between the sheds, the house, and the fence. Majority of the sheds will have to be removed or moved to be in compliance. The city's setback requirements are more restrictive than state setback requirements. The city's code requires between buildings 10 feet separation and the setbacks of 10% of the lot width, which is in most cases 7 to 9 feet. The California State Code has 5 feet setbacks. If the city setback requirements match the state, a couple of the sheds currently not in compliance would comply, but majority would still not. So we're still looking at majority of the 21 sheds in the Skid Mesa area that have been identified through a complaint-based system that are not in compliance and would require either movement to the backyard, which is involves landscaping, or to be removed entirely. So code enforcement is also monitoring the RV parking, which is another issue that was noticed or identified at the Skid Mesa neighborhood. And some of the issues there were not only the fact that they are storing the RV parking, also similar to sheds, blocking the passage, but also driving over the city's public right-of-way and driving over the sidewalks, as well as city-maintained landscaping. So per prior council direction, city staff does not enforce the CNRs, but we are enforcing the municipal code. It's also worth mentioning that per Planning Commission request, a memorandum has been prepared outlining the process for formation of an HOA if the homeowners of Skid Mesa desire to do so. The memorandum is now available on the city's webpage if anybody is interested, under the Planning Department page. Now, we're here available for any questions if you have any questions. And we also have our code enforcement officer here with us tonight. But that concludes my report.
Are there any questions of the staff report?
I just want to thank you for pointing out that we are not the Skid Mesa HOA. And can we tell the state that we have 21 ADUs in Solvang now? No? That's all I got.
What's the basis on, what is the setback for the ADUs? Is that the state setback of 5 feet?
4 feet, but I'll let the attorney address.
So for accessory dwelling units, the city, the state law provides for a 4-foot setback. The 5-foot difference is a building code issue, so it's a building separation issue, not so much a setback. So you've got 5 feet you got to have between building for fire rating issues. So there's a couple numbers that you're looking at. You're looking at,
Yeah.
for an accessory dwelling unit, a shed is not an accessory dwelling unit. They're
Right.
differently defined. If a property owner came in and said, I want to build an accessory dwelling unit, we're limited in how close to the property line we can allow it to go. With sheds, there's not really a state regulation for a shed that is exempt from the building code, which is 120 square feet or less. So the problem is this mesh of different regulations that we have. The reality is, for a lot of the smaller lots in town, as Xenia mentioned, the setback is a variable number. It's not a set number. It's 10% of the width of the lot, and that's on each side. And some of these lots, because the houses are so large, they're already built up to that number just with the occupied structure. And so when the sheds go in, they end up being right on the property line. And so the issue is, there's a couple issues. There's public safety is primarily the issue with the sheds. Because the side yard setbacks can be a fire access area for firefighters to go in, having sheds that occupy the full amount of space between the occupied structure and the property line can prove to be difficult access for fire. If there's a fire in the backyard, they need to get through that. So that's why you have setbacks for one reason. You also have setbacks to just provide a breakup of space in between the occupied structures. So that's the difficulty that we have. There are 21 out there that are in violation of the code. We've sent out the notices. We've received quite a bit of pushback from members of the community. But those codes have been in place for some time. They were in place when the Skip Mesa was developed, and that's what we're faced with at this time.
Did the CCNRs specify city codes?
So the CCNRs, interestingly enough, are even more restrictive, I would say, than the city's codes, because they talk about construction having to go through a very strict process among the members of the community. It has to go through, I think it's a design review committee of some description. I don't remember the full restrictions that are under the CCNRs, because we're not enforcing the CCNRs, but there are provisions in the CCNRs about what the members, the homeowners in Skip Mesa have to do if they want to do any kind of construction there. They have to follow those provisions, but that's not enforced by the city. That's enforced by the mutual property owners, so to speak, in the absence of an HOA.
Well, my concern was if the CCNRs violated what the city code said or reinforced the city code said, that should make it a little clearer on what to do. But if there is nothing there that seems to be in violation or conflict or support of our codes, then it's our codes that are there, and that's what needs to be enforced one way or the other.
Yeah, and we do have, as Zinnia mentioned, we have the right but not the obligation to enforce the CCNRs.
Right.
We could go on that process. I would propose, however, that using city taxpayer funds that are for the entire community, to go and enforce a private restriction of property in the absence of a life safety health issue would not be a wise use of city funds. Now, when it's a situation where it is a city ordinance, like the setbacks, that's something that's a matter of council direction as to policy as to whether you go. But when we see a violation of city code that is generated from a complaint, then that's when the citations come out.
Do we have any idea, and maybe code enforcement can help us, of what it would cost to move a 100-foot shed 3 feet away so it falls within the setback guidelines?
It's going to differ, I suspect, depending on the shed. Some of these sheds are smaller, but once they're constructed in situ, in place, and it's hard to just pick them up and move them. They're not designed to be moved by a crane like that. They're actually built in the spot where they exist. And there may not be any space on the lot for a shed to be moved. So it'll be very fact specific.
Wow.
I had a couple questions. One is, how many residents would it assist to go to the minimum state? It said in the one part, that one solution would assist many residents, but not all of them.
So, having spoken with our code enforcement officer, it looks like it will be a couple of sheds that may be aided by that, may
Only
fall
a
into
couple of the 21.
Right. So, out of the 21, I believe actually 1 or 2 might be in compliance, then another 2 might be helped by this amendment, but the rest of them would still be not in compliance.
And I think part of the issue is because in the absence of an administrative inspection warrant, we can't go into a property with a tape measure and figure out exactly how close they are. So there's a little bit of uncertainty, but if you eyeball it and see that a shed is right next to the fence line, that one is very easy to do. If they are in between a space that looks like it's a typical 8x10 shed and it's consuming the entire space between the house and the fence line, that one's easy. But there may be 1 or 2 where if you move it a little bit towards the house, it might be able to work. That's where that difficulty comes in.
Okay.
There's also the question of, apparently there's 21 residences that are in violation under our current code. Letters were sent out, 11 residents responded, 10 have not. Do we know that these people have received notification? Or are these are vacation homes, they're not here right now, they're back in Maine or wherever they live or something else?
We will definitely be following up. So 11 have responded, and they have definitely cooperated and worked with our code enforcement officer and understand the situation. Obviously, there's a number of them that are disappointed with the fact that their shed would be cannot be in compliance unless it's removed. The rest of the 10 will continue to reach out, and at some point, if we continue in this direction of enforcement, then they will be receiving additional letters if they are not responsive in terms of administrative fines and the next steps.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of the staff report? Seeing none, we'll take it out to public comment. Is there anyone wishing I do not have any speaker slips?
Our
Our code enforcement
code
officer,
enforcement officer would like to say a couple of words. Go ahead, Eddie.
you can come on up.
Maybe when the vaccination weeks go door to door, they can check on those too.
First of all, Mr. Mayor, I want to say congratulations. I tried to reach out to you before, but I didn't have your personal number. I'm very happy to
Well-
see you here, and Councilman Thomas as well. and-
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie.
So, this is a county, or not a countywide, this is a citywide issue, and this has been pointed out. There's been a couple more residents since the report to the city manager that have responded. Some of them very hostile. One of them very, very hostile. So, who threatened to go to every house in the city of Solvang and report additional sheds. And which person might do that. And this is one of the reasons why we ended up with 21 reports of sheds in the Skid Mesa area anyway. So I think the 5-foot state requirement would help some residents. Maybe a few in Skid Mesa, but definitely the rest of the city. The 10,000 square foot lots that, you take the 10% width of, like it was mentioned before, these houses are built right up to the setback, the side setback area. So they can only have a shed on the other side of the house. But in most cases, there's only 13 or 14 feet and on that side of the house. So if you go 10 feet between the house and the shed and another 8 to 9 feet on the other side of the house with a 10-foot wide shed, you don't have any space. And I think it's not just Skid Mesa, but I've driven around the city and didn't have to go very far. And I think that we would have a lot of violations of this code, based on the currently how we're looking at this. There are more now sheds that I've seen where if it was 5 feet, some people could move their sheds over a bit and be within compliance with the code. So I'm actually surprised that a lot of people from Skid Mesa didn't show up. A lot of them said they were going to show up tonight, but that's how it goes.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie, for what you do.
Well, is there any we have out in Zoom land? Kristen Kellner?
Kristen Kellner, please go ahead.
Hi, can
Hello?
you hear me?
We can hear you.
I was really hoping some other neighbors would show up because I feel like you've heard from me a lot on this issue. But I'm Kristen Kellner, I'm a resident of Skid Mesa, and something that Eddie kind of touched on, I'm feeling really concerned about the complaint-based code enforcement, as I think the city should really consider the validity of the complaint and the precedent you set on how you respond when someone reports other homeowners in defense of their own violation. We've had small sheds in the neighborhood for years without issue, and as he said, citywide, small ones in the setback. I feel like if they were an issue, something would have come up. But none of the sheds were tagged by bar when that was going on. None required a permit. None, to my knowledge, created an issue for the adjacent property owner. Point being, as far as I know, there hasn't been an issue with the shed in the neighborhood prior to last December 2020. So in December, a new structure went up. That's a huge issue for me. I'm the adjacent property owner of the original original structure, and I contacted the city. After speaking to my neighbor on 2 separate occasions, I tried to resolve. We actually both agreed that we would contact the city. She was gonna contact, and I was gonna contact, working together to find a solution, I thought. So the neighbor sent a response and listed the 20 addresses, and I just think it's important to address how different the situation is than the original. My neighbor's shed is enormous. It's 112 square feet, and it's, I believe, she told me 12 feet, 10 inches. It seems taller to me. But it spans the length of the fence for 14 feet, towering like 8 feet above it. It's right outside my master bedroom, so it actually makes me feel uncomfortable inside my home, in the most private room of my home, because it towers above it. And it's 2 stories, which the code clearly states 1 story. So if I think of someone going up there and putting in boxes while I'm in my bathroom, it's really uncomfortable. It required a permit, which was not obtained. None of the other sheds required a permit exceed the height requirement. It's as close as physically possible to the fence, literally 2 inches, as close as she can get it. And it sits way, way back in the backyard, so it's a focal point of my backyard now. It has removed any feeling of separation between me and that property. It's like this fence isn't even there, and that this huge shed, and I don't know if you've seen the pictures, I would hope you will look at them, compare them to the other sheds. It's just enormous. It's like it's in my own yard, and I'm not cool with it. And the code supports that it doesn't belong, and it's more than just the setback. It's the size, it's the 2 stories, and then it's an issue because the setback is an issue in this case because of the enormous size. It really, really pains me to know that the fact I want to see code enforced at this property now impacts other neighbors. They're all being grouped together now as if it's one issue. I know Eddie brought it up that something triggered it, and so I'm glad that's been cleared up. But it's like one person grossly violated the code, comes in, says, I'm copying what everybody else did, but it's not a copy of what everybody else did. In some cases, it's 4 times bigger than other people's sheds. And I think a storage unit that's like, I don't know, 6 by 4, maybe 7 foot tall, discreetly placed in the side yard, you can barely see it. In some cases, it's, across from the neighboring homeowner's garage, so it's not visible. It's teeny tiny, some of them are plastic. It's not the same as an 8 by 14 shed that's 13 feet tall or maybe taller.
Ms. Kellner,
Yes?
sorry, you've run past your time.
Oh, okay,
Sorry to cut you off.
that's okay.
Point taken.
We did note that, what you were saying. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't know there was a time limit.
3 minutes.
Thank you.
Are there any others that wish to speak that are out in Zoom? Seeing none, bring it back to council for any follow-up questions or comments.
How does this issue get resolved?
That's a great question.
I mean, obviously, it's frustrating to a number of the residents out there. I'm assuming that the best way would be if they chose to do an HOA, but that requires, 67% of the residents to buy into that, which I think might be a tall reach, but
I wish
is there
they
a
would.
way to resolve this?
Because I don't want to be the referee for CCNRs in a section of our town, because we represent everybody.
Well, the problem is it's not CCNRs, it's city code.
Yeah, then enforce it.
And that's the issue. I mean, what Ms. Kellner was saying about the size of that one thing is it was never permitted. It's wrong, it's illegal.
Then
and it
there's
needs to be
laws and
removed.
rules on that. That
And
just needs to be addressed.
That I think we need to address.
The code enforcement needs to address that.
Yes, however, that's addressed by the city.
Yeah.
So let me jump in. When Ms. Kellner says that that 8 by 14 shed was not permitted, that's kind of a loaded statement because the building code does not require a permit for a shed of under 120 square feet. An 8 by 14 shed is under 120 square feet, not required to have a building permit for that. However, there are requirements under the CCNRs to obtain approval from the city for certain construction. The issue is not whether or not it required a permit, it's where it's located. The issue of a permit, if the property owner had come in to city staff and said, I'd like to build an 8 by 14 shed, it wouldn't have been a building permit issue. It would be, you can't build it in the side yard setback. You can build it in another part of your property if you would like, and we do not require a building permit for that. But you cannot put it in that side yard setback. So I just want to correct what Ms. Kellner said about it not being a permitted structure. There was never a permit application for it.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, but if she is correct and the neighbor is incorrect about the height, then it does violate the code for a side structure.
So the height issue could be problematic. That may be a building code issue. I haven't looked at the height issue specifically, but I understand the property owner was looking at shaving that additional height off there. I don't remember, do you have any more information on the height issue on that?
I believe it was a 14-inch height, and that would trigger a requirement for a permit, not that it wouldn't have necessarily been permitted. So the issue with all these sheds, once again, is the setbacks for this shed and for other sheds in
The setbacks
violation.
is one question, but what Ms. Kellner was bringing up on the height, because I looked into those because I was working with the Elberhoy, and they've got a couple sheds, there's a certain height limit to it without requiring a permit. I believe that height limit, help me, Laura, I think it's 12 foot?
Yeah, yes, Laura Timor with planning. The code is 12 foot, under 12 feet, and 120 square feet. We are working with the adjacent landowner, and we will be working with them on a solution. So we are following up with them. You know, the structure that they currently have cannot be permitted in that location. They've been informed of that. We're looking at other options.
Thank you.
We're
Okay,
good.
it's being addressed, and I'm good with that, so.
Yes,
thank you.
we actually have a meeting on Thursday. Thank you.
Excellent. So that takes care of one out of 21.
Okay. I do have a question.
Mayor Pro Tem Morona, go ahead.
So obviously, the city has certain guidelines for accessory units such as sheds, and they're more restrictive than the state. What would be the situation if a city doesn't have a code on that? Who enforces that? How does the state go after something that's out of compliance?
So the two parts of the state code are a little bit different. One is dealing with accessory dwelling units. That's not what we're talking about here. The other one is just a building code in general, which is a building separation issue. It's not really a property line setback. So the 5 feet that we're talking about is the distance between two structures under the building code, is my understanding. So in the absence of having a city ordinance on that, you just couldn't put two sheds closer than 5 feet to each other. Now that, I'm not sure if that's an occupied structure of that 5 foot or if it's any kind of structure. I believe, however, it's an occupied structure, can be no closer than 5 feet unless you have certain fire rating in between it. So if you have like a duplex, for example, they'll have minimum fire rating between the two units under the building code in case one of the units catches fire, the other one doesn't. Same way with the 5 foot separation. That 5 foot separation is for fire protection, is my understanding under the building code. So even if Solvang did not have this provision in the side yard setbacks, we'd have to look at it from a building code standpoint. Is there a permit required? Okay, if there's not a building permit required, then they can put it wherever they want, assuming you have that 5 foot separation. So To answer the question, how do we solve this? It's difficult because there are so many layers that we have to look at. We have our municipal code that we're trying to enforce with the side yard setback. We're looking at whether or not it requires a building permit. If it doesn't require a building permit, then we're only going to be looking at the side yard setbacks. And the side yard setbacks still have a safety element in it, in that if you block the entire side yard setback, the firefighters can't pull the hose back to the back of the house, they can't get through the side yard to get to the back of the house, and therefore you have a risk to the community, not only from the house that might be on fire, but the neighboring houses on both sides. So there's a reason for having that side yard setback that is completely aside from aesthetic reasons, if you will.
Are there any other questions? Or any direction that we want to just, no? Okay, because that was just an update. There's no. Madam Clerk, read item number 6.
Thank you. So item number 6 is direction on wastewater treatment plant, Phase 2, Alternative 3, MBR versus Alternative 2, SFR. And if you recall, this is an item that has been discussed in different phases. The wastewater treatment plant update was identified as needing certain improvements. You have recently approved the first stage, which was the aeration project, which is currently under construction. And we were going to come back to you with Phase 2, which is today's discussion. And then in a couple of meetings, we'll be coming back to you with Phase 3, talking about the recycled water. And our Public Works Director, Matt van der Linden, and our consultant is here as well. We'll present this report.
All righty, thank you, Zena. Good evening, Mayor Yurg and council members. As was mentioned, I'm going to be making this presentation. So I did want to just mention, we've been talking about the 3 different phases of the project. The aeration system replacement, which is under construction right now, it's going very smoothly. I'm happy to report, and the contractor is actually a little bit ahead of schedule. So that's going really well. Phase 1 is approximately $3 million. Phase 2, we'll get into the costs in a moment on that, but it's the big part. It's the main part of the project and the upgrade and rehabilitation of the plant. And then Phase 3 is probably on the order of $4 to $5 million total for the recycled water. And that includes the recycled water treatment aspect, and then also if the city council so chooses to do a recycled water distribution system of some type. But as was mentioned, we'll talk about Phase 3 in a few weeks from now. But I did want to just mention, so this is like the big main part. This is basically 75% of the whole thing. So with that, I'll just launch right in. Is everyone able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So just by way of background, wanted to give a little bit of the history of some major milestones in the past and how we got to where we are right now. So the plant that's there now was built in 1996 and 97. So it's basically getting close to 25 years old. When you have a wastewater treatment plant like that, it consists of a variety of different components. As you probably, I think you've all been out there and had a tour. So we have these major reinforced concrete basins out there. Those have a useful life of 50, 60, maybe even up to 80 years if they're properly maintained and everything. But we also have a lot of other equipment and machinery that has a useful life of 20 years on a lot of it. And so our electrical equipment, for example, and you can just imagine, the smartphone in your pocket or that you carry with you, how much that has changed in just, in 10 years. And so we've got electrical equipment at the plant that's over 20 years old, and other components of the plant and machinery, some of which we rehabilitate periodically and replace major parts and components. But main thing I'm trying to convey here is that a lot of the machinery and equipment and components of the plant now have reached the end of their useful life. And we're getting, we're sort of nursing them along and getting a few extra years out of it, but there's a lot of components that do need to be replaced. So then kind of fast forwarding from that point to August 2016, and that was when the Regional Water Quality Control Board requested of our staff that we begin to try to denitrify the wastewater. And so again, they indicated that when we go to renew our permit, that's going to be a requirement in our new permit. So they said, hey, can you guys try to work on that ahead of time and achieve that denitrification? So in April 2017, we did achieve that. It took not quite a full year, but it took several months to fine-tune the process and work out some bugs. Then in May of 2017, we initiated the process to renew our permit, and that was as dictated in our existing permit, that in May of 2017 we had to initiate that process. So that's why that particular date. Then in November 2017, the City Council awarded a contract to evaluate upgrade alternatives. In September 2018, the alternatives analysis final report was presented to the City Council. In April 2019, at a special City Council we had a special City Council meeting to update the new council members at that time, and the City Council directed staff to acquire some additional land. And we had been looking at the possibility of expanding the treatment plant capacity from the existing 1.5 million gallons per day capacity up to 2.0 million gallons per day, and the decision was made to just restore that lost capacity and hold it at 1.5 million gallons per day. Then in August 2019, we looked at additional upgrade alternatives, and those are presented to the City Council at that time. And then in September 2019, we provided even further additional information to the City Council, and they directed staff to proceed with alternative 3 pending further cost analysis, which is what we're presenting tonight. And then they also directed staff to proceed with the final engineering and design for the project. And they did also ask us to expedite and implement the aeration system replacement immediately. So that's kind of the origin of how the project got split into phases like it is now. And they also directed us to implement a sewer rate study to support the project financing. Then in February 2020, the City Council awarded the engineering contract to Corolla Engineers, and we have Jeff Weishar here from Corolla Engineers. He's the project manager on the project and will be available at the end if you have any technical questions. And at that time, alternative 2 SFR, which is a step feed process with rectangular clarifiers, was identified as the best alternative to be compared to be compared to the alternative 3 with the MBR, which is the membrane bioreactors. Then in February 2021, the City Council awarded the $3 million aeration system replacement construction contract. That's this City Council here today. And that, as I mentioned, that project's under construction. So I wanted to just give a little quick overview of the existing wastewater treatment plant. This is just basically an aerial view looking down. The treatment plant, it's unfortunately not located in the most ideal place. It's kind of on a hillside. I think most of you have all been out there. Typically, wastewater treatment plants are located in nice flat areas when you have these basins, and everything can kind of be constructed in a more simpler way. But anyway, so it's, I'm not sure the history of why it ended up like that, or, this is property that the city was able to acquire at the low end of town. And so anyway, it's not in an ideal location, so access is a problem. You can kind of see how everything's, not in clean, parallel, and perpendicular orientation. Things are kind of twisted and, oriented, how they can kind of fit to the topography. But anyways, that's just an area view of the existing plant with the SBR basins, the sequencing batch reactor basins there in the middle, with identified as item 2, 3, and 4. And then this just is a process diagram. Our existing treatment plant right now has full secondary treatment, and so that's in compliance with state requirements. And this just shows you, kind of a profile view of the process with the wastewater coming in. We have the initial screening, then we have grit removal, then the wastewater goes into the sequencing batch reactors, and the solids go to the digester, and the clean liquids effluent go into the percolation basins. So, as mentioned, many of the facilities are reaching the end of their useful life. And so, through all these studies, we identified the minimum improvements to address the existing deficiencies. So the first deficiencies are being addressed right now with the aeration system replacement project. And then we also have problems with, we need to add equalization basin or new clarifier. The admin building is in bad shape. We need completely new electrical equipment and a new laboratory. Our laboratory is very antiquated. We also need new sludge handling system and pumping equipment, new upsize pumps and control panel, new emergency generator, improved site access and circulation, and new parking area and paving. So I'm not sure if you'll remember from your visit out to the plant, but where the solids are from the digester are run through the belt press, and the last bit of liquids kind of squeezed out of those. There's just this oddball kind of triangular shaped area where with the kind of narrow opening where big semi trucks have to turn around, dump off these empty dumpsters, then move the full dumpsters around to a position where they can load it onto the back of the truck, and then once the full one's moved, then they have to move the empty one back over, and they do this like whole shell game kind of thing, shuffling everything around, and it's just a really inefficient layout. So now getting into the two main alternatives here that we're looking at. The MBR, the membrane bioreactors, that was alternative 3. And this is just a plan view showing that. And so the main thing to note in this is in the middle, we have the kind of the dark blue there. We have the 3 sequencing batch reactors that would be modified. And then at the south end or to the right, the light blue basins, there would be like an equalization channel, and then 4 basins with the membrane bioreactors. And so the membrane bioreactors look like giant square racks with long spaghetti noodles hanging down that drop into the wastewater.
Wastewater. Thanks, Matt.
Well,
I was having Italian
just
for dinner
little
tonight.
straws. Okay, think of it as little straws.
Cioppino.
But anyway, so those fibers that hang down, they're porous and allow the pores in those membranes only allow particulates below a certain size to pass through, and so all the solids and other compounds get held out, and the clean effluent is pulled through that and removed. But those require regular cleaning, which requires a lot of use of chemicals to clean them periodically. And then they're very expensive, and they have a useful lifespan. Usually it's between 5 and 10 years for those, and then they have to be completely replaced. So, but anyway, so this is the basic layout that was in the alternatives analysis done a couple years ago. But Then the other alternative, again, is the alternative to SFR, that's the acronym for step feed process with rectangular clarifiers. And so this doesn't show the entire site, it's kind of a zoom view showing the SBR basins, then the rectangular clarifier situated neatly adjacent to that. That space, by the way, where the proposed clarifier is shown is where there had been planned a fourth basin if ever needed. So it's an area that was already planned for a large basin structure like this. So that kind of works well with the prior design. And then the upper middle part of the drawing with showing kind of that sort of brown square and the green rectangle and the other blue area there, light blue area. Those are, well, the green structure and the blue are part of the recycled water facilities. So that's just kind of showing where those would lay out on the site if that is implemented. Okay, here we go. So
Matt, do the SBRs that you're showing there, are those the same size that we have existing? Or
Yeah,
those
that-
are larger?
no, those are the existing.
Those are the existing
yeah,
ones
these are
that we
the
have.
existing,
And
yeah.
so on the MBRs, those were larger than what we would have? Those would need to get rebuilt?
No,
Same
that's a very,
size?
very good question. For both alternatives, there's basically this add-on to the end.
Okay,
So the basins will be modified, but the MBR or the rectangular clarifier is added to the end there.
that would be the blue.
Correct,
Right.
the largest light blue rectangle.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the clarifier in this alternative, and let me just go back real quick. And so the light blue area, there's sort of four squares and then the long rectangle.
Right.
Those are the existing basins in the dark blue, and the light blue is the add-on for the membrane bioreactors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those look bigger, just on the
Yeah,
drawing. so I
the
just
drawing
wanted to double check
zoomed in
that.
a little bit on the one version.
Okay.
Photoshopped version.
So, oops. Okay, so that's just identifying some of the facilities.
And then the
Matt,
new
can I-
admin, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Is the area where the rehab tank is that currently functional?
Yes, that's the existing digester.
Okay, I didn't
Yeah.
know if it was working or not, okay.
Yes, it is, yeah.
And then my question was, the admin building is still gonna be, we're not seeing the admin building yet at this point.
Correct, yeah, so we weren't really focusing on that. With both alternatives, that would be the same. And the proposed location for the new admin building is at the top of the plant. So as you drive out
Through the
there,
gate.
and you go through that upper gate at the top of the plant, that's where, actually outside that gate is where the new admin building and office and lab would be, and all the new electrical equipment. And that's the most appropriate place. It enhances security because the building is right there and the staff are there. If someone approaches, the plant has been robbed once before, a few years ago, on the weekend, maybe I think in the evening. Yeah, a guy took a wheelbarrow and went out there and cut through with some bolt cutters and stole a bunch of stuff. But anyway, so for security reasons, it's the best. It also has the overview. You can be in the office and it'd be designed with windows out, looking out over the plant.
Yeah.
So they could see the operations of the plant. And it also enhances the circulation and everything. And that area, it's outside the fence. It's outside of the area the city used to own, but it's within sight of the new area that we've purchased from the Alisal Ranch. So it'd be on city property, so. Okay.
Thank you, man.
So we just wanted to list the advantages of the two alternatives. I mean, conversely, you could say where you don't have an advantage, it's a disadvantage, but anyway, so we just kind of focused on referring it to it as advantages. So you can see the alternative 3 MBR has a smaller footprint. Both alternatives remove the nitrate to comply with the pending future regulations. Alternative 3 does have, the main advantage of alternative 3 is that it produces a higher quality effluent. And, but the effluent from alternative 2 fully complies with all the pending regulations and all the current regulations other than the nitrate regulations that we talked about. It's also much easier to operate the alternative 2. It's much simpler operation. It's lower energy consumption. It is lower O&M costs. It's much lower capital costs. That's why I gave it the double check there. Lower impact on the sewer rates and lower recycled water costs. And so alternative 2 does have quite a few advantages. And definitely, you know, the one thing about alternative 3 you can say is that, like I mentioned, it does produce higher quality effluent. And if it was maybe $1 million more expensive than alternative 2, and the operating cost was maybe less than $100,000 a year different, then we might be recommending that to you. But we don't feel, the staff does not feel that the slightly higher effluent quality is worth $5.5 million capital cost and $350,000 a year operating costs. It's just, we just can't see that. So here's the cost comparison. This is just a summary. In the staff report is Corolla Engineers' full technical memo which goes into a lot more details on the cost. But the bottom line is alternative 2 is close to $6 million lower capital cost and about $350,000 a year lower O&M cost. And you know, the O&M cost is an interesting thing because, you know, one of the big concerns, which is an important concern, is sustainability. And we hear that more and more, you know, nowadays. But as an engineer and from an engineering perspective and an operations perspective, it's really important. So alternative 2 is going to use much less power and going to be much simpler to maintain. The components are going to last longer, so you're not basically hauling things to the landfill as often. And so it is definitely a more sustainable alternative. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, Jeff Weishar with Corolla Engineers is here in case you have any technical questions that are beyond me. And then we're looking for the City Council direction on proceeding either with the alternative 2 SFR or alternative 3 MBR for phase 2 of the wastewater treatment plant water quality project.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions of the staff report from council members?
Yes.
Councilmember Infante?
Couple of things. Back in 2019 and 2020, I forget, Nathan came in and said, no, I didn't want to do membranes. The cost, the upkeep and everything else of that. So I thought that was already a done decision that we weren't going to go membrane. So I was a little surprised to see it brought back here again.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And so the previous city council liked the fact that basically the MBR combines the secondary and tertiary treatment. So recycled water, basically producing recycled water is basically taking the secondary treatment that we have and adding what's referred to as tertiary treatment, which is additional filtration, and then you disinfect it, and then you can use it for various uses depending on how you treat it. But so the city council liked that. The other big thing was we had a different engineering firm that did the preliminary analysis, and their cost estimate unfortunately was off. And they underestimated the cost of the MBRs. So basically, the MBR was previously more expensive, but it was not as much more.
As it is now.
So the delta or the difference between the two alternatives was kind of small. And so with that, and the higher quality effluent for recycled water, the previous city council directed staff to go with the MBR. But it was understood that the costs were preliminary, so the comments that we received were, okay, we want to move forward with alternative 3, but validate the costs as you move forward. And so we did include in the RFP that was approved by the city council a task in there to validate the cost, which is what we've done now.
This report by the consultant has a very impressive estimate breakdown. I mean, you go all the way down to sales tax, contingency, everything is in here. This is well done. Can't say the numbers are good or bad, but the breakout is quite outstanding. But I'm kind of curious. Here's my concern. So we can do this for $3-4 million less if we don't use the membrane. But if we go to phase 3, the recycled, I think you mentioned that was another $4 million. If we go with the membrane, do we ever need to do recycled as a separate function, or does the membrane produce the same quality of water?
Okay, so very good question. The main thing to remember is these costs here, and I did put a footnote here. So the 21 million and the 15 million, that includes all the recycled water components.
It does.
Yeah, yes, it does.
All right, I got
So-
lost on that one. Thank you.
Yeah, so of course, the recycled water treatment is a bigger cost than the recycled water distribution. But if you wanted it, so if you look on this slide, there's the little asterisk, that footnote. I'm trying to set the stage for when we come back in a few weeks to talk about the recycled water.
But it's secondary.
Because with phase 3, you have the option to, phase 3 has 2 components. 3A is just the recycled water treatment, and phase 3B is the recycled water distribution. So right now, and we'll get into this more in a few weeks, but we don't have a customer for recycled water. So it doesn't make sense to build a distribution system. But I can tell you, I very strongly believe that within the next 10 years, with the way climate change and drought conditions and restrictions on pumping from the San Ynez River, all those things are adding up to paint, or to paint a clear picture that within the next 10 years, we're going to have to use that recycled water for something. And I've already been, Councilmember Infante, you're on the
GSA.
the Groundwater Sustainability Agency. They're already looking for water that could be possibly used to basically recharge or replenish the groundwater basin. And so, it's a little premature to talk too much about that, but I do feel pretty confidently, having worked in the water industry for 35 years now, that within the next 10 years, the city's gonna need that recycled water.
Right now,
But-
all the water we recycle out of the plant goes into a settling pond, which settles down to the river underflow and goes to Lompoc. So we don't even get the benefit of the 1.5 million gallons of water we process a day.
Yeah, right now, that's the plant capacity, but the flow in the plant's about half of that, about 750,000
Okay.
gallons a day, but,
But it's still a lot of water going down the drain, if you will.
right, and we'll be having a closed session item and then a public item regarding the protest dismissal agreement. You may recall that the Alsal Ranch and ID1 have protested
Yeah.
against we're trying to amend our permit with the state to move our wells. Excuse excuse me. So they've protested that, and we finally reached an agreement at the staff level, and we're gonna be bringing that to you, but for a decision and possible approval of that protest dismissal agreement. But yeah, so the idea is if we moved wells downstream, then we could take some benefit of the of that water.
The water we're using. Clean it up. Thank you.
Are there any other questions of the staff report? I think I had a couple. See if I had it clarified. Just wanted to double check. Right now, the costs that you had in here and the differences that were on that page 49, those were for a 1.5 million gallons a day.
Yeah, all the cost information that's presented is for
In the
one
capacity.
1.5 million gallon per day capacity.
And confirming, like, say, on page 70, which is now we're getting to the cost comparisons in the actual report from Corolla. It looks like the difference from a 1.5 to a 2.0 is maybe 10% to upgrade, and I don't know,
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
and yet we're getting a 25% bigger capacity, at least, is my math wrong?
No, you're in the
From a
ballpark.
1.5 to a
Yeah,
2.0?
Yeah, you're in the ballpark. So let me just, but that's a good comment and question. So originally, we were looking at the possibility of expanding the treatment plant capacity because we received a written request from the Santa Ynez Community Services District for additional capacity in the plant. But then they later withdrew that. And then we also received, before the Los Olivos Community Services District was formed, there was a group, kind of a self-appointed community group, that came and requested capacity in the Solvang wastewater treatment plant. And then we were also, considering, what might happen in the future. And so there was all those things factoring in. But since then, Los Olivos the community services district there has decided to build their own little package plant there in town. And also during the drought, what we found is the flows to the wastewater treatment plant actually reduced. So, there's all these low flow toilets and low flow shower heads and all these other things. So, forgive my vernacular, but the same amount of poop was going to the treatment plant, but with a lot less flow. So so the concentration of the wastewater was going up, but the actual flow was going down. So the basins and everything, with this phase 2 upgrade, they'll be adequate, and we'll restore that lost capacity from modifying our process to denitrify. That's how we lost the capacity that we did. But, yeah, and so the flows right now are approximately 750,000 gallons per day in the summertime. So we do have a fair amount of surplus capacity, well, after we finish phase 1 and phase 2.
So the next question is related to that capacity, even if we're just talking Solvang, what are the projections that we're gonna be needing in 20 years? We're starting to do the housing element and all the homes that were expected to be built here. Would we be smarter to do a 2.0 instead of the 1.5? Because the cost difference, to me, just doesn't seem that much compared to what we would actually be getting overall. Maybe I'm looking at that wrong, but that's just the numbers. I'm not a numbers guy, but that's.
Yeah, I mean, it's whatever. The main thing is any additional cost is going to impact the rates. So
Correct.
kind of the sense that we had been getting from the previous council, the previous 2 councils, and this council is, hey, we really need to watch that rate and do what we can to keep it low. So that's what we've been really trying to focus on. But also these facilities, a lot of the components, again, on this project will have a 20 to 25 year lifespan, and And that's at the point when you probably need to look at that question of whether we need to expand the capacity. And there's one other thing I was going to mention. We're working. We're just about in about 2 months we'll be done with an update of our sewer master plan. And so the last time we did a sewer master plan was in 1988, and so it's been badly needed. But what they're looking at in that is the wastewater flows with 25% of the, I think it's 25% of the properties in Solvang having ADUs added, and the full build out of the city. So what you got to remember is we don't have that much vacant land left. So it's
Right.
just a little bit of extra development, and then the ADUs to get the build out. So unless the city did, something major in the future to expand the city limits, annex land, grow and all this, then there's not really a need at this time to take the plant capacity to 2.0.
Okay. And then, I guess lastly, I just was wanting to ask, in page 74 of the project cost, they're talking about the preliminary design report. And it's talking about $1 million, an allowance for $1 million for direct costs. I'm not sure I totally get what the $1 million an allowance is for that. I just wanted a clarification on that.
It's on one of your screen slides too.
Yeah, I mean, are we still waiting for that report, or is that part of this report? I guess.
I'm sorry,
It's
can you
saying- Page 74, in the project cost, 6.2, second paragraph. It starts off with, it should be pointed out, the PDR will develop the issues of site layout with resulting civil and yard piping costs. Has that report been done, or is that what the 700,000, or excuse me, the million for direct costs? Just trying to clarify, sludge handling has been estimated using an allowance of 1 million for direct costs. But is that based on the PDR, or are we still waiting for that to get firmed up as far as direct costs?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, please. Thank you, Jeff.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Thank you. You guys all work very well together. It's nice to see civil city councils. Okay, so the
He's never watched us before.
Hold on.
Really?
You should see some of what we get into.
Should have been here 2 years ago.
Almost. So the $1 million was basically stating that at this point, we don't understand the full details of how we're gonna build the site out. So piping, all the electrical that has to be put in place and replaced, as Matt has said. So that's more of an allowance that says, we just haven't looked at it yet in enough detail to understand how all those boxes are gonna connect on the site.
Okay.
And then the other things he mentioned, security, paving, access, all that. So that's a cost that's built into our estimate at this point. So when we go to the next step for additional design, we'll understand that better, and that will get refined.
Okay,
Yeah, so it's like a contingency, basically.
it's a contingency, got it. Okay, thank you.
I just have a quick question.
Go ahead, Councilman.
What is the 2.0 life cycle cost, or can that be tabulated?
We can look at it. It's probably, if we stick with the clarifier approach as we're recommending, you're talking about some more horsepower, some more electricity. To go back to what you were talking about earlier on the capital cost, we were directed to kind of master plan for 2.0 MGD. So when you look at those basins, those are kind of already there. They'll be able to handle that flow and that loading that's coming in. So that's why you don't see a huge add-on cost for the next phase. You're just gonna be adding a few components, some pieces of equipment, and maybe upsizing a few pumps. So it's not like you have to go and add more concrete basins to get there. But to the life cycle cost, I'm not sure that we did that, but we can go and look at it. For
Can you
sure.
please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Another question, if I may, please?
Yes.
I keep hearing power levels, electrical power levels. I'm not seeing, or I missed it, anything on emergency generators or solar or battery backups. What happens when the power goes out? How do we do
Emer-
it?
line item for
Standby
generator?
generator is in there.
There's a line item for generators in
There
there.
was,
Yeah.
I saw one earlier. Okay, there's a line item. No consideration for putting in solar?
Actually, that is in the scope of work of the contract. And the concept at this point was to do the engineering, and then if we're able to get a grant to cover the cost of that, or the majority of the cost of that, then we'd bring it back to the city council for consideration. But the design does actually include that.
Okay, but right now it's emergency generators for backup.
Correct.
Generators are standard even when you have solar.
Even with solar, you would
The
like that.
plant runs 24/7 and the power doesn't,
Right.
unfortunately.
All right, thank you.
Just one comment. Again, you're recommending the alternative 2 SFR over the alternative 3 MBR.
That is correct.
I want to say in all my years at government, I find it rare that somebody comes in and recommends the lower of 2 options. So, appreciate it.
Glad to be the first.
All right, are there any other questions? I guess the one last one is between the 1.5 and the 2. I thought I was reading in there somewhere that the state is going to be requiring the 2 from us, or did I read that in the report?
I don't think that was
No?
in the report, but what the state will do, because you have to do annual reporting to the state on your flows and your loads and your treatment, and when you appear to reach 75% of capacity, they start saying, okay, what's your plan to expand? And when are you going to expand? So that's really what kicks into motion the need.
Okay.
If the municipality hasn't done it before or hasn't started it yet, that's when the regional board would tell you you have to start planning for that expansion.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
in our permit right now, it specifically states 80%, but
80, okay.
basically they want you, if you're starting to get up to 80%, they want to make sure you're planning ahead, because it takes many years, obviously, to implement these kind of things. And they don't want the plant to be overflowing and having problems, so they want you to start planning early enough where you address it well ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we can take it out to public comment. I do not have any speaker slips. Is there anyone in the audience that would wish to make any comments or have any concerns? Seeing none. Is there anyone out in Zoom? And I don't think I see anyone in Zoom, so we'll just bring it back to wrap up. Any last comments or questions? And is there any, we need to make a motion to proceed with alternative 3 or 2? And staff sounds like they're recommending 2. Is there someone to make a motion?
I'll move that we proceed with option 2. The
We have a
SFR.
second?
Second.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes?
Mayor Pro Morano,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Uri.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
And just no
Thank you.
more food analogies, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'm now gonna have to go to a hamburger. No more Italian food. All right. I was gonna take a break, but I just take a 5-minute break if we can. It's a little 8:15. We have a couple more items left, so call the 8:18. We'll be back here at 8:23. Order at 8:28. Madam Clerk, would you please read item number 7?
Item number 7 is first reading of the ordinance establishing the membership terms of office, duties, and organization of the Tourism Advisory Committee. So I can start it off, and our city attorney can describe in more detail, but by way of background, on June 14, you received a report on marketing strategy, and you gave general direction to come back with more details for formation of what's being presented to you as Tourism Advisory Committee, TAC. The recommendation is for you to approve the first reading of the ordinance establishing the TAC. If approved, the second reading will be presented to you on July 26th, and the ordinance will be in effect 30 days after the second reading, when we'll be able to convene the TAC. The TAC may consist of up to 7 members serving 2-year terms. Each city member, as presented, would appoint 1 member to the committee, and then any 2 additional members are selected by majority vote of the council. The reason that this is recommended to be greater than just the 5 members is that you would want to ensure that you represent a cross-section of the community on this committee, which is proposed to include representatives of the areas from large hotels, small hotels, large and small retailers, any shopping centers, restaurants, cultural, visual, or performing arts, real estate, local attractions, or professional within the marketing community. The TAC members must be Solvang residents unless the city council determines an individual who is not a resident is needed for a particular expertise or background. And the TAC would serve in an advisory capacity, so they would not be making final decisions, but they're rather an advisory body for you for marketing matters, who would provide with advice on the following matters, which would be tourism and marketing initiatives and plans, feasibility and effectiveness of tourism and marketing initiatives and plans, selection of consultants and their scope of work, and then marketing budget allocations. As you would recall, the prior structure with SCVB was where the control was kind of shifted almost entirely to that nonprofit organization, while after that, the control or consideration of marketing were completely shifted to city council. And with you having broader responsibilities over city matters, this advisory committee is proposed to really represent the community and be an advisory body to you.
All right, are there any questions of the staff report?
Can we get this done any faster?
Yes, there is a way. And Solvang, because it's a charter city, has the ability to set its own procedures for adopting ordinances. Generally, for general law cities, an ordinance can only be finally adopted at a regular meeting. Solvang has explicitly provided in its municipal code that an ordinance can be adopted at a special meeting. And it's done so a couple times in the last couple years. It's not a very common thing, but it is a possibility that you could set a special meeting. There is a spacing between the 2 readings that you have to have, but you could set the second reading at a special meeting that would be sooner than July 26th. So that's the answer. Yes, it can be shortened up, but you do have that spacing. And I want to say it's 3 days. I'll check that for you for sure, though.
I'd like to talk to the rest of the council members, but it's just, we've got all these contracts coming up. We've got visitor center, we've got all this stuff. It would be nice to have this group available to review those RFPs and all these marketing ideas, the new website stuff, everything that we need to get done for the city. So I'm just impatient.
Okay, so here's what it says. This is section 1-4-13 of the municipal code. Ordinances shall not be passed within 2 days of their introduction. Ordinances may be passed at any regular or special meeting of the city council. So if you wanted to speed this process up, you could have a special meeting on July 15th. I know we have one on the 14th. The timing's a little unfortunate on that, but you could do it within 3 days of the introduction and have it go into effect 30 days afterwards. So that would speed it up by about 10 days.
It's hardly worth it to go through all the extra effort, but thank you.
And City Attorney, my understanding is that we would be able to advertise for the positions in the meantime, so.
Yeah, there's nothing to prevent the city from looking for people to be appointed to this committee while this process is going forward. So I think it would be a good action for the city to start that process now, assuming the city council passes this ordinance this evening on first reading, which I don't want to presuppose a policy decision for you.
Yes, you do.
I was just wondering, I guess one of the questions I have, or Councilmember Clark, did you have a
I don't know if I
question?
should bring it up now or later during council comments, but I'll bring it up now, since you gave me the
Go right
opportunity,
ahead.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. When you say the TAC must represent a cross-section, and it lists all these different things, I know this sounds a little silly, but I'd like to have somebody that has nothing to do with any of those things. Just one person on the committee, somebody who lives here, maybe works in Santa Barbara and drives our kids to soccer. Because that's kind of what a majority of our constituents or residents are just regular Joes and Janes that live here and have nothing to do with Copenhagen Drive. But everything that happens in the city affects them. So it's just my 2 cents worth.
But this is marketing.
I know.
mean,
But if you're putting that many people together, and I just think
Having one
it's a
that's-
fresh voice, just an idea. And I'm okay with it either way.
I had also just one thought, is that for the people that we appoint, it should be not anybody that's already currently on a commission. I mean, like, are we, just depending on who we would be thinking about, I think it should be someone that may not be.
We're gonna run out of people if we keep
I
doing
was
this.
just thinking that. Also, when you talk about the requirements for exclusively being in the city of Solvang, there's a lot of merchants that have been here for a long, long time and have a lot of insight that maybe have a business in Solvang but have since moved, out Ballard Canyon or something like that. But then again, it mentions that it can be considered. And I'm sure that there are probably 1 or 2 people that would be a asset to this committee that maybe don't live in Solvang.
I would agree.
And just as a reminder, council, this is on for first reading, so you can tinker with the language as much as you want. You can add things, you can take things away. And when it comes back on second reading, you don't have that option if you want to pass it as is, but you do have that option right now.
Do you think we should have up to 7, or just make it 7?
I think whatever number, I think it's kind of arbitrary. I think it's a good mix of voices, so I'm okay with 7.
What I would propose, and I think one of the reasons that it's done this way is in recognition of the difficulty of attracting people to serve as volunteers on these types of committees. Having 5, if you have a wealth of applicants, then you can move it up to 7. If you don't have that, then you have a functional body at least. You've got at least 5. Making it 3, that's too small. So this was kind of the happy medium, the way it was drafted, to try to come in at a number where each of you will have direct inputs by having a direct appointment, and then if necessary or if desired, to have an additional 2 that you could add on for additional qualifications.
Is this gonna be a Brown Act committee?
It will be, yes.
Okay.
Do you know what we're foreseeing them meeting once a month, possibly, similar to the other commissions?
Yes, I would say so, yes.
I know some of the people I had asked, they were just trying to, what's the time commitment? So that's kind of, yeah.
The ordinance as proposed just says that they'll have regularly scheduled public meetings. I imagine at the outset they would be more frequently, but ultimately I think they're going to be able to make the rules for the transaction in their business. So if they at some point believe that quarterly is sufficient, I don't want to lock it in at monthly at this point.
And I would hope it would get to that point.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Are there any other questions, or are we good as it is?
What's the selection process for these 5 people? We were gonna, I think it said that the city
Yeah,
council.
each council member selects an individual. So this is in section 252 on page 78 of the ordinance. Each city council member shall appoint 1 tourism advisory committee member selected from the qualified individuals who apply, which shall include incumbents.
And if we go for 7 positions, how do we select the other 2?
So the additional 2 are selected by the council as a whole.
just as a group.
We throw out names and say, oh, yeah, good idea.
Yeah, and notwithstanding section 251, the city council by majority vote may appoint up to 2 additional members selected from the qualified individuals. So if you get to 5 and each of you have appointed 1 and you know there are 2 really good candidates that you would like to appoint, then the council as a whole can go ahead and do the additional 2.
So we can, the way this is written right now, actually make it go to 7 if we wanted to.
It is flexible in that way, yes.
Packing the court.
Keeping the quorum.
In that case, I don't, anybody see a reason why we shouldn't accept it the way it is?
Let's
Now
go out to a
we-
public comment right now,
Oh,
real
sorry,
quick.
gotta go to public.
Sorry. So if there's not any questions of the council, we'll take it out to public
It's just Dave.
comments, and I have no speaker slips, and are there any comments that wish to be made of the people that are in-house? Seeing none, take it out to Zoom. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for final comments, and I will entertain a motion.
I'll move we accept the amendment as suggested.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Infante,
Yes.
Mayor Potem Marona,
Yes.
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Yurick.
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Thank you, council.
And
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, we added the item number 8, and I cannot remember.
Item
Wait,
number
it's
8 was
Going to be the addition of,
discussion of library operations and approaching the court system about the use of that facility.
correct.
Okay. So. Turn this back on, my apologies. I went looking for this to find out a way to release the court so that we could expand the library into it. And this is called the Trial Court Facility Modification Advisory Committee. Okay? And I will send this link to anybody that wants it. My thinking at the time was to introduce myself and my position as a member of the city council, but I cannot speak for the city council because we had not voted on anything as a body. And ask for permission or ask for how to get the court decommissioned, I'm not sure what the word is for a courtroom, so that we can then approach the Santa Barbara County to release the property for us to expand the library into it. And that was really all my intent was. I don't, you don't sign up for these things, there's no way to put it that I could figure it out, but I'm gonna be on there, I'll go in as general comment in front, not on the agenda, and ask the question and tell them the intent. That was what I was planning on doing, and beyond that.
It's so formal. I mean, it's a building that doesn't get used,
I know.
but yet, don't touch it.
It's government.
Yeah, government.
Have you considered maybe of touching bases with the supervisor department?
I have, and she has no idea.
No, but I mean from the standpoint of supportive,
Supporting what, no, I'll get hold of Megan.
because it may require,
Yeah.
board of supervisor action as opposed to a city
Or a
council. I don't know.
congressperson.
Yeah, awesome.
That's an excellent idea. No, I hadn't
Possibly
thought
the
about that.
sheriff.
Thank you.
At one time, I know it was being discussed for an expansion of the sheriff Solvang station at one time, a few years back.
To expand into the courtroom? Wow.
I'm sorry?
So I don't know when I'm allowed to make a comment, when I'm not.
Please make a comment. Come on up.
Yeah, if there's a very good reason why it would be far more beneficial to the residents.
If I can, Mr. Mayor and Council, Lieutenant Green, obviously. If I'd have known this was gonna be a discussion, I would have definitely prepped for this. Shooting from the hip briefly, I can tell you that your law enforcement personnel are stumbling over each other and are literally on top of each other in what we have of that building. And I know that my predecessors actively tried to get in there to expand and give us the needed room for our personnel. Over the years, our squad size has come up due to the various reasons, we have our additional contracts that we have, and The need for computer space has increased. The need for being more ADA applicable has changed things up for us. So we literally don't even use detectives in this particular station because we've had to put them to another location because there's no room for them because we had to take their office over.
Next question. Lieutenant, then, has anybody at the Sheriff's Department started this process of going through this acronym that Councilmember Infante gave?
I know that again, I would have prepped differently and looked into this a lot more had I known this was gonna come up tonight. However, I know that my predecessor was trying to work to see if we could get part of some of that. As you mentioned, it isn't being used. I do know that the courts, at times would reopen it, if I remember
Right.
correctly.
They did.
For various minor reasons and only for a short period of time. But, and so they may not be willing at this time to even talk about it because that's, as we all know, it's Santa Barbara County and real estate's real estate, right?
Or would you even be amenable with the council's help to work on this on a 50-50 split, if that was the case, to get some room extra and to give the library some room?
We get half of it, the library gets half of it, and they get half of it?
Yeah, and then we get yes, and then we get an extra.
Can we get a discount in the contract with the sheriff's department?
I'll leave that on a contract bureau.
Right. I think there's a bit of a stretch here. But, yeah.
I'm gonna go with
But
no
if you have
comment
the
on that.
council and the Sheriff's Department lobbying this organization.
I think it's a great idea. I was just kidding about
Yeah,
the
no,
point. Kind of.
I
my
think
first
it's a-
3 arrests were in that building. I'm kind of nostalgic about it.
I think it's a worthwhile venture. I know that my predecessor was working on that as well. And I think it would definitely benefit both sides. I think there could be a way to work it out where we could probably work on splitting up some of the space and whatnot. It's been a while since I've been in that actual area. As you mentioned, it's been dark for quite a while.
Yeah.
And going off my memory from years ago, last time I was in there, I believe there's ample space to make something work.
Do you know approximately how much room the sheriff's department would like to have there?
Can I get back to you on that,
Yeah.
Councilman?
Yeah. I mean,
It actually was his predecessor, which was Eddie, was the one that had been trying to work through, trying to get that whole thing done.
Yeah.
So it was having conversations with Darrell Parker, who's in charge of Superior Court, because they're the ones that actually have that whole space allotted for them, so.
see, I don't even know the full footprint. I've been in the courtroom for legitimate purposes.
Yeah, same here.
Santa
Book
Barbara
sale and a
BAR.
speech, yep.
Define legitimate.
We'll talk about that later, too.
So there's a seating area for the public, the fence, gate,
It's
chairs.
probably actually about twice the size that you see.
I think it is
Because
too,
you
because
have
it
the
has to get back
hallway
room.
on the other side, as well as all the office spaces, and the depth is all
We have
exactly the
justice
same.
chambers, the
Yeah.
AOP
Good-sized
position
courtroom.
with that
Right.
window, if I remember right, I think their AOP window is a bulletproof window, which is very beneficial for my AOP staff. That would be a way
Right.
to move things in, put it under the cover of the building versus the outdoor one with the awning.
Right.
There's a number of different things I think that could be worked out. I'm sure with minimal contract work, you could establish some things and get some good ideas.
Well, that's the other part of it. Even if we get this all released, now we gotta get a contractor, now we gotta get somebody to pay for all of this.
Yeah, that's,
And so part of it is, can the library come up with enough money to fund their half of it? And you guys, I'm sure, can come up with the money to take care of your half of it. I think it's a great idea. I never thought the sheriff's department needed it, so I didn't
Oh,
think. of it.
definitely.
Definitely.
I would be more
You never
than, I know I
told
can't
me.
have you all at once, but I'd be more than happy to take you one at a time through the station in the middle of the day. At nighttime, as you would imagine, there's not as many deputies and my AOP staff isn't there. But in the middle of the day, it's, we're on top of each other.
Pardon me, what's AOP?
Administrative office professionals.
Thank you.
and if I can add, and Charlie knows this, so before COVID, I spent an evening riding with the sheriff and went inside and toured the building and saw that everybody, and you're right, it's that one room where the officers come in and out of, it's a tight spot. I hadn't thought about that either. But this collaboration, I think, could be kind of intriguing.
Here's
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, the one thing, excuse me, Mayor, the one thing that crosses my mind is it used to be used by the Santa Barbara North County BAR, their Architectural Review Board. And I don't know that it's being used by them anymore. if it is still, is it possible to allow them to use this facility when they want to have a Santa Barbara County BAR meeting?
What's wrong with the Vets Hall?
That's a bit big. I don't know what they have for small spaces. This is the kind of space,
Yeah.
they don't even need a dais, they just need a table, they sit around, everybody gets together, there's a bunch of architects, and they talk about this stuff. So I don't know what the resolution for that is. I have not heard that they're still having meetings there. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, let's make a list of 10 or 12 questions that we obviously have tonight and see how quickly we can get those addressed and bring that up at a future meeting.
Okay, so here's the last part of this then, if I may, Mayor. What do we want to do about Monday? Do we want to approach them, this trial advisory group that gets rid of cap courts, I guess, and ask for release of it for half for the sheriff and half for the library?
Can't hurt to try.
Yeah, I have no problem standing up and speaking to them
But at
about it.
least you're getting your foot in the door, and I keep talking out of turn, I apologize.
No.
No, here was my point, though. The timeliness, if we took a little more time to look at the sheriff's aspect of it, and get the sheriff on board, and talk to Supervisor Hartman, get Supervisor Hartman on board,
Great idea.
and kind of build your coalition a little more, and then do it, rather than trying to get something done quickly next week, take the time, build your coalition, and then go after it.
But also, I think Councilmember Infante's initial quest was just to find out how to do it. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I have no problem with anybody saying, what do we need to do? And I'm sure they'd be forthcoming and
Yeah,
and
I agree with that.
cordial. And while we're getting that information, but if it's a done deal no, then let's not spin our wheels. Let's do what you want to do first.
But now, using library and sheriff
Yes.
as the
I think it's a great
two
idea.
organizations that could use the space.
Yeah.
We
But-
throw some
but I
kids.
like the idea
We got to
of
throw some
Hartman.
kids in there too.
I think you should just keep it open and say, hey, our law enforcement department needs the space, our library needs the space. Say all of these different community projects need the space. Don't lock it into
How do we do
either
this?
one.
Is it something we
But
can
I
even
think
do?
definitely the first thing to do is approach them and look at the possibility of it.
The one person that should be part of that meeting would be Daryl Parker,
Yes, I agree 100%.
because he's the one that ultimately makes the decisions for Santa Barbara County Superior Court for the state. And facilities is part of that.
Okay, now wait a minute, but I don't know this gentleman.
I
You're
do.
talking about on Monday, when we go?
Well, I was just saying, whether we get shut down, I mean, if you still want to proceed, however we get shut, if he's not part of that group, that may be someone up in the state, but he's ultimately the final say in what's gonna happen here in Santa Barbara County in that court.
He may be able to shed light into your original and first question to start off with, to see if you're spinning wheels
Yeah.
and any of us are spinning any wheels.
Will he answer my email if I send him a message?
He might, and
He
I
might.
could,
Well, that's that Infante guy, get him.
yeah, well, if you guys don't mind, I could try doing that as well, cause he works out of where I work every day, so I can get
Please.
a hold of our lieutenant.
Oh, great, we appoint
and
you.
we
Yeah,
could try and
familiar.
talk
You're
it out.
appointed.
Yeah.
I'll figure that out, so.
Thank you. No, I don't know who is involved in this. I just figured I would launch my face up in front of these people and say, hey.
And,
Well,
and
I
I'll-
appreciate your enthusiasm, I'll
Yeah.
tell you that.
And I'll
And
just.
I appreciate your comments, Councilman Thomas, too.
Yeah, I'll just let you know, I'll also, talk to Eddie, because I know he had extensive contacts with Mr. Parker on what was gonna happen there at that facility, because at the time, we didn't have a large enough female locker room as well to accommodate, Title IX stuff. And so we kinda had to,
And hence why we have
Make
an
one.
office that had to be moved, and we made one.
exactly,
Wow, really?
so, yeah,
The history is funny, isn't
yeah.
Well, you're talking about a building that was designed long ago, and the mindset was different back then versus today's.
It's my understanding the only reason we have it here is because we had a couple of judges that lived up here and they didn't want to drive to Santa Barbara.
That much I do not know.
I've heard that. I don't know if it's true.
Save all the people that are getting citations having to go to Lompoc.
Anyway, Thank you very much. I appreciate the information. I had no idea that that was a need, so now I know. I'll work on that. And if you'll get me his information, pass my email on to him, that'd be
I'll
great.
find that out.
Okay.
Do we need public comment on that?
It's a regular agenda item, you should have
We
public
need to have
comment.
public comment on
Um,
that.
On that note, I just want to point out that until Councilmember Infante brought up the name of the commission or committee, I'd never heard of it before. I did pull up their agenda for Monday. This would just be something that would be under public comment.
Public general comment.
Right, and they will not be able to take action, but it will be a good opportunity, as with members of the public coming here, asking a question, how do I do this? They will refer you to their staff on this, because they're dealing with much larger issues, it looks like, from the rest of their agenda.
More important than me.
Not more important, larger issues. I'm talking cost larger issues of security for courthouses throughout the state and so on. But it does look like they would at least be able to point you in the right direction.
And that was what I assumed would happen. If I asked them, that they would tell me how to get in touch with somebody that could, where I could carry this on. So I'll work on it. Thank you. I appreciate
It'd
it.
be also interesting, excuse me, if we can find, if there's any way to find any other city that's done this, to see how they, what route they took, and if they can give us any pointers. And I don't even know where you go to start to figure that out.
Go to Cal Cities and Dave.
Yeah, possibly.
I think Paso Robles turned their courthouse. They had a courthouse, a very small facility. It's now private. I don't know if the city did it, San Luis Obispo County did it. They have a magnificent new courthouse in Paso Robles, but the other one was decommissioned because it was right around the corner from my old office. I used to appear in the small courthouse, but they may have some guidance in San Luis Obispo County.
Zena, do you have any contacts up there?
I do as far as cities, yes, and county.
Can you just ask somebody up there to kind of look into it for us?
This would have been 10, 15 years ago that they did this, so if
Well,
there are
yeah,
people
but
still
somebody
there.
with some history of the city might know. I mean, 15 years, if we get this thing done in a year, 15 years, somebody's gonna know that it happened.
I can just tell you from experience of about a year and a half ago now, when we approached the county CEO about that whole facility, there was some discussion that the court system is working currently on combining their facilities in Santa Maria. So this one would be on the list to be decommissioned once they have success with their steps forward.
So it might actually already be thought about. Oh, that's good. That's good.
I'm sure Mr. Parker will have that information for you.
Thank you, sir. That'd be wonderful.
All right, we'll take it out to public comment for right now. And no public comment.
Wave.
Great shot there. Seeing no comments, we'll take it out to Zoom. There's no one on Zoom. Bring it back for final. And we'll just take no motion on it. Madam Clerk, item number 9.
Item number 9 is AB 1234, report out and council closing comments.
Anybody have any closing comments? I have none. And we will adjourn at 8:56.